Oh, this is gonna be very good, guys. For the first time, I am doing a Godzilla figure review that's not from the Monsterverse. Let me introduce you the 2023 favorite film, arguably. And this film has sang many praises. This film has also received an Oscar. Everyone loves this movie. This is, of course, Godzilla Minus One. Very highly reviewed movie from the critics and audiences alike. I watched it once. I've seen it in D-Box, so I got the premium experience, and I can agree that this film is fantastic because it's story writing. I can agree with everyone who sings their praises about this movie, and Yamazaki's a great director, and I would love to see him make a Godzilla Minus 2, a sequel if he needed. But what bothered me the most was everybody start unfairly comparing Godzilla Minus One to GXK right when GXK's first trailer dropped. You were like, nah, this is terrible. Minus One's so much better. Look, you're entitled to your own opinions, but I am firmly standing by that. Why not have both? Have some variety. If you just stick to one thing all the time, it's gonna lose its value. It's gonna lose its flavor. So I appreciate that we live in a society where we have this Godzilla and the Monsterverse Godzilla. Minus One's a great film, and if they actually drop it on digital, I wouldn't mind doing a reaction video with the guys on the podcast. So let's hop right into it. Today we're gonna be looking at the S.H Monsterarts Minus One Godzilla here. In case you forgot, I actually purchased this roughly around February. S.H Monsterarts figures tend to have very stylistic packaging. They come in this box, but then they also have a see-through bit where you can actually look at the figure inside. The last S.H Monsterarts figure review that I did was on Mecha Godzilla, which was, I did that around 2022. So it's been a minute since I've done a Monsterarts review. But I've always sang their praises for the packaging. Playmates has done the open package concept where you see the figure there and then. Because this is the more high-end stuff and obviously a little bit more expensive, they do need to protect the quality of the figure at all costs. And this package does look great, but unfortunately it won't really look great on display. There are some packages that are worth keeping. This is definitely worth keeping, but it's not really worth being put on the shelf to look on display. Now, that being said, we have some great aesthetics here, starting off with the photo of the figure, of course, and you can see the Godzilla Minus One logo on the side, Bandai on it, 2023, that's when the movie came out in theaters, keep that in mind. Still not out on digital yet. Here are some of the other logos, Tamashii Nations, and then you can have the seal of approval here, just in case, because I'm pretty sure there are some knockoffs out there. And then we have the Toho and all the other old classic Godzilla logos. Very nice. On this side of the box, we have a shot of the figure, and then at the back, we have, of course, a very nice see-through Godzilla Minus One logo here. You can see the figure inside, and then, of course, you have some info, which is all in Japanese. I do not know what these are saying. I assume this is the context of Godzilla and the guy who designed this figure. So yeah, if you know Japanese, feel free to translate in the comments, because I don't know how to read Japanese, unfortunately. And then on this side, another beautiful shot here of the figure, but in a little more willow filtered like aesthetic there, so that's pretty nice. On the top of the box, nothing much, just see-through, and of course more of the logo. It's upside down, I'm sorry, I know. And then there is stuff at the bottom here as well. Let's flip this around. The big question is, how much was this? How much did I pay for this? I remember Mechagodzilla costed me roughly 150 Canadian with shipping because I bought it online. This one I bought it in store, and I think I paid roughly around $120. No, I paid $200. This was worth, this was $200 almost with taxes and everything. So this was more pricier than Mechagodzilla. But Ghidorah was still the highest, most expensive figure I paid for it. So this cost roughly half of how much I paid for the King Ghidorah. So yeah, these figures are not cheap, but these are all the high-end stuff. So packaging aside, let's crack this bad boy open and take out Godzilla. Okay, the figure's out of the box. let's take a closer look at him. So, this has been sitting in my room for 2 months almost. This was sitting in my room even when I went on vacation, so it's about time I finally take a look at this. But I had a bit of expectations because of how long it took since I bought it. I thought, damn, especially with the price I paid, surely I was gonna get like an atomic breath or something, but I just remembered this is S.H Monsterarts. It's always gonna be overpriced and you're not gonna get much out of it, and they certainly did that here. This was 200 Canadian dollars, and I was at least expecting an atomic breath, but it's just a figure. I would have liked the price to have gone down a little bit. Maybe 150 for this is good enough. It has to be worth their time to develop this figure. So I understand, but 200 is still a bit much for this in my opinion. So S.H Monsterarts has great quality most of the time, and they have upcoming GXK figures, and they're gonna do, I think, all of them. Godzilla, Kong, Scar King, and Shimo, and they're also going to do multiple different figures, but they're very selective when it comes to who they're doing. Now, obviously for Godzilla Minus One's case, it's just Godzilla because the story is very human focused, and Godzilla is just the villain in the background, if that makes any sense. He's the villain, he's the bad guy, he's no protector of nature. He is a straight on bad guy, killing innocent beings and destroying buildings, but he is a background character. And I can say right off the get-go, this looks very nice. I have gotten so used to the Monsterverse Godzilla. It's nice to go back to where he originated from, Toho, of course, and this was their design. And I think, I don't know if it's Yamazaki that designed this, or they actually had a creature designer do it. Whoever did it, they did a solid job, because this does differ from Monsterverse Godzilla significantly, but it has its own unique flavor that does make it terrifying. Now, Godzilla was absolutely terrifying in this movie. It was almost like a horror film. The intro scene where he attacks the soldiers on the island, that was him at his like small dinosaur stage. That was before he grew and developed into an even bigger monster. Now, apparently, this Godzilla is smaller than Monsterverse Godzilla, and his atomic breath, even though it's super powerful, it takes a mighty long time to charge up. If you saw in the scene when he first uses the atomic breath, it's a slow buildup, and his dorsal plates kind of like grow a bit as he charges up, and then when he actually unleashes it, it's like, it's so powerful and sudden. It looks OP, but it takes a long time to build up. So, I would have liked to see a little bit of that integrated in this figure, and maybe like make it half blue or something, and then you can include the atomic breath piece. That would be pretty sick, because you can see the motion of him charging up his atomic breath. Compared to Monsterverse Godzilla, he does have to charge it too, but it's significantly quicker. So, the overall look, now we got the colors, you can see it's a bit of brown. There's a little bit of brown shading on it, which I think is a pretty good contrast color, because if I think of a contrast color for a black colored figure, I would usually think gray, silver, or white. But they went with brown here just to highlight the texture a little bit and have some of the colors stand out. I think that's creative on that part. Now, is it movie accurate? Usually, Bandai is very on point with their S.H Monsterarts figures in terms of accuracy and size, most importantly. Their Ghidorah was actually bigger than Godzilla, and Mechagodzilla was actually bigger than Godzilla. So they have the scaling pretty accurate, and that can be said with the look as well. So I assume that Godzilla in the movie Minus One has this kind of contrast going on. There's a lot of daytime shots where he looks a little bit more, I guess, grayish. Especially that scene where he destroys the train and then roars into the sky after shooting the big atomic breath. This is how you know I've seen the movie. So the color changes with the environment, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say here. Now, one thing I noticed with this particular Godzilla is that his legs are a little bit stubbier, but his thighs are massive. He's got big chonky thighs, but it's a bit stubbier compared to Monsterverse Godzilla, because I keep going back to Monsterverse Godzilla because that's the only other monster art figure I have of Godzilla. This is the first time I have a Toho Godzilla. So here's my comparison. Here is I believe this is the 2019 S.H Monsterarts Godzilla. And of course, we're gonna get a pink one soon for GXK. I'm excited to get that. But this is the best I got in terms of comparison because this is Godzilla in his default look, pretty much. As you can see, big difference. They are both Godzilla, but they look very different. MonsterVerse Godzilla has changed his dorsal plates to look more like Toho Godzilla's dorsal plates, but you can see from -1s, it's still shaped very differently. So that's great that this is the same character, but we have completely different looks and tones of each monster, which is actually crazy. Now, the thing with this particular Godzilla's case is that it's only one color scheme. The entire figure only has one color scheme, whereas we have some brown contrasting -1s here. Now, sizing wise, I do believe MonsterVerse Godzilla is bigger than -1's Godzilla, so this is a little off, but that's okay. This is also a little more pricier than the other MonsterVerse Godzilla I picked up at that booth, which I haven't opened yet, which is why I can't compare it yet. But one of the biggest things I want to compare is the articulation, because as you can see, while -1 has some chunky, thick legs, it's also quite stubby, not too much articulation, whereas MonsterVerse Godzilla has several points of articulation in his feet, his knees, and his main thighs. So that's what I want to look at. What about -1 Godzilla here? He does have articulation in the legs, as you can see. You can move it forward, and you can move it somewhat backwards, but it is there. It's evidence. And then there's also knee articulation, but you can't bend it forward and back. You can only swivel it from side to side, which I think is partially due to because of the way his legs are shaped. That is probably why, but that is a little bit disappointing in my opinion. I think it would be nice if he had more room for articulation. You can also move his toes. His toes individually have their own bits of articulation, so that makes up for it in a way. It does look pretty nice. I do think the brown really stands out here, and you can see like his toenails, they do stand out, so I do like that. As for tail articulation, you know, it's all in ball sockets. You can see the articulation goes all the way up here, so that's pretty good. It's quite flexible, and that's very important. And it's also a much thicker tail compared to MonsterVerse's Godzilla, and you can see MonsterVerse Godzilla has very similar articulation, but a much thinner tail in a way. If anything, I feel like MonsterVerse Godzilla is leaner than -1's here, and the articulation does not interfere with the dorsal plates. That was one of my biggest concerns, is when I saw how big the dorsal plates are, it would clash with the articulation. Doesn't really. It actually doesn't. Like, the biggest dorsal spike is this, and it is interfering with the two dorsal plates beside it, but it's not really that clashing. So I think that's the design doesn't malfunction. That's what I'm trying to say here. And then other points of articulation, we have the waist, and this was quite evident when I first took this figure out of the box. I already felt this articulation. Great waist articulation there. So, you know, have him have a motion where he's about to hit a building. It's quite easy to pose him in like that, so that's pretty good. Also, there is articulation on the neck up here. It's very firm, but it is possible. And then, of course, the main head, yeah, it's also quite firm. As you can see, it's not too flexible. That kind of sucks. I feel like it should be more flexible. Arm articulation is quite good. You can see I'm lifting the arms all the way up like this. You can open it up. You can twist the elbows pretty good. You can move the waist. And then the detailing is also pretty sick on the hands. As you can see on the hands, there is a bit of brown on the claws, on the fingernails. That's pretty good. Pretty good paying attention to detail type of vibe that you get when YouTubers review products. That's usually the same terms they would use. As for the head, let's take a look at the head real quick. If the camera can focus in on the head, you can see that's his face. It's pretty accurate, to say the least. Spoiler alert, his face does get blown off by the main character as he flies his plane into his mouth. So it would be cool if we got an alternate headpiece where you can swap that one out for, you know, that blown up head. That would be pretty sick. I sincerely apologize if you haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm just saying, especially with the price I'm paying, I'm still thinking about what could we have gotten more with that price tag. And I think an alternate headpiece, because that is a thing with these figures, that would have been great. Maybe we should have also gotten a headpiece where his eyes glow as he's shooting the atomic breath. But it's a pretty solid face. Looks very different from Monsterverse once again. And you can, I know you can't really see it, but you can move the mouth. It's very subtle. Not too far though, but it is possible you can open and close it, so that's pretty good. Also, one very noticeable difference I noticed is that there's also an elbow spike. Something that evolved Godzilla had in GXK when he turns pink. He has elbow spikes, and I think they kind of, I don't know, maybe they inspired it off Minus Ones here. I'm not entirely sure, but if you can see, it's there, and it has a shade of brown. And so therefore it stands out. You can see it, it's obvious, but I noticed that and I thought, I mean, this movie did come out before GXK, so did they get inspiration for that? Potentially. I don't remember seeing it in the movie though. It could be just for this figure, but if you know, you let me know. Let me know in the comments whether I'm right or not. And I think that's it in terms of articulation. Yeah, so obviously with S.H Monsterarts figures, there is playability. That is good, but keep in mind, these are high-end stuff. The price tag already makes it that. And I wouldn't say this is a children's toy. In fact, I think many collectors will be offended if you call this a children's toy, because yes, there is playability, but these are for grown-ups. These are high-end stuff. Responsible people own these things, not for children, because I do think these break too easily. These are very delicate figures, especially with Mechagodzilla. Speaking of Mechagodzilla, here he is. Here's Mechagodzilla from 2022. I think that's when it released. It was revealed when the movie came out in 2021, but it wasn't actually released until 2022. And so I wanted to compare it because obviously Mechagodzilla is supposed to be bigger than Godzilla. It's a bit accurate here. Now, realistically speaking, if these two actually fought, if Minus One Godzilla fought Mechagodzilla, would he been able to fight him? That's a big question. But you can see Mechagodzilla has great articulation. That was one of the many things I appreciated about this figure, especially in the tail. It's super flexible. So that's something I wish Minus One Godzilla had more of. At least for Monsterverse Godzilla's case, there is more points articulation. It's evident, it's there. You can see it for Minus One, but it's also very firm. There's actually not too many options. But in terms of the appearance, the design-wise, it's up there with these two. I think they've done a very good job. And whoever the guys, the artist on the picture on the box, whoever designed it, whatever his name was, I think he really took the time to obviously watch the movie and look at Godzilla look like there, translate it into a physical figure. And I think he did a pretty solid job of it. The main issue I have with this Godzilla is, especially with the price tag, we could have gotten more. This figure is great, but it's definitely not worth 200 bucks. Look, again, this took time and effort to make, so you do need to make some of that money back and make your time worth it. So I'd say 150 bucks is very valid. $200 is fine if there was other stuff included, such as an alternate headpiece. Like I just gave the example earlier, we could have gotten another headpiece of his face getting blown up from the plane. We could have also gotten an atomic breath piece because he does have his iconic atomic breath scenes in the movie. And believe me, they are quite iconic. And another suggestion, have a face with a piece of the train attached to it because he chomps on a train in one of the scenes. And it has, I believe, the main character's love interest on it. And that would be sick. A collector buys his figure and displays this on the shelf with a train piece stuck to his mouth. Oh, you can recreate that scene in stop motion. I'm just imagining it. That would be sick. I think with all those options, especially because we have a Kong that's a special edition and it includes multiple different heads, hands, and one where he's holding a severed Mechagodzilla head, we could have gotten something similar here with Minus Ones. If they're gonna re-release another version of Minus One Godzilla, firstly, don't re-release this because it's gonna be a re-release. No one's gonna be happy. Do one where the dorsal plates are blue and he's shooting out the atomic breath. That's simple as that. So what would I give this Minus One Godzilla out of 10? I'm gonna give him a solid 8. Now I have to look at this as just this figure strictly. My main complaints were the extra stuff that could have gone with this. But strictly looking at this figure, it is pretty good. I like it. The playability is good, bit firm, but it's good. The overall look is great. The colors are great. The contrasting of brown to black is great. And overall, it does look very movie accurate, and Bandai has always been on point of that, so very good. I would love to see another version of Minus One Godzilla, maybe one where he's shooting the atomic breath. So that is my opinion and my review of the Minus One Godzilla here from Bandai in their S.H Monsterarts line. It's nice to review a Godzilla figure outside of the Monsterverse, especially his origin is from Toho in the end, so it's nice to visit one of Toho's own IPs. And I think this is a pretty solid figure. I haven't owned any of the other Toho Godzilla S.H Monsterarts figures. Maybe I should get more. We'll see. This was just available at the booth. I didn't even think of buying it. I just saw it at the booth and decided, let's give it a try. I just can't justify the price I paid for it. I really can't. I'm sorry. The way I look at money is you gotta make the most out of the price you pay for, and I just feel like I didn't get that with this figure. But overall, it's solid. If the price went down, this will be a perfect purchase. And any loyal Godzilla collector should have this, because any loyal Godzilla fan knows that there is variety. So that's what I think of this Godzilla figure. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and of course, if you want to check out the review I did of Monsterverse Godzilla here, I've done many, and then of course, Mechagodzilla, be sure to click the link in the description and up here in the corner or in the end screen. For now, I have a brand new Godzilla to add to the collection. Pretty solid one. First time a Toho Godzilla is being added, so very stoked for that. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.